Hi there, it's Peter here again. You're watching the ScrollMagic 101 free online course for front-end developers and designers, where you will learn the basics of ScrollMagic API in under 50 minutes. If you know me from YouTube or from my blog, you know that I don't like to talk too much fluff around. So we'll get straight into the basics. But before we do that, let's review some good, nice, inspirational ScrollMagic websites so you get pumped up for the rest of the course. I'll play a nice background music and you enjoy the next couple seconds browsing through cool ScrollMagic websites. I've already included links to all of them, so feel free to open them in your browser and explore them now. And we'll finish it with the last one, sonicpass.com, which is my favorite ScrollMagic site, which is a nice, elegant, soft transitions between the slides and also using the default scroll bar. Okay, so I'm not a big fan of disabling scroll bars, so all the demos and the examples in this ScrollMagic workshop will use just the general standard browser window scroll bar. I'm not a big fan of disabling it. Hopefully you got the sense of what you could do with ScrollMagic. Most of the sites, as you see, are using also GreenSock. So the combination of GreenSock and ScrollMagic gives you a lot of power, a lot of creative power. So hopefully you can create something amazing. I'm very confident that at the end of this course, you'll be able to recreate some of these effects quite easily. And now let's dive into the basics. If you haven't already, download the starting files and unzip them into a folder on your desktop. I'll be coding these demos inside of the basics folder. So let's open that together in a Sublime Text and open the index.html, the main.js and the CSS main CSS. Okay, so these three files will be working very closely throughout all the demos. Three files: index.html, main.js, and main CSS. Okay, inside of the index.html, let's review them in a browser. Is this basic layout, basic template that we will use in the first couple demos. Okay, we've got an intro slide which takes the full height of the screen, and then we have three project sections with an image, project title, and little description. If we review the index.html inside of Sublime Text, you'll see that we have a simple HTML5 boilerplate with a linking the style sheet, and then simple layout with the intro slide, which is the top part of the side with the blue background. And then we have a main with three sections: project 0, 1, 2, and 3. They all have a class project, an image, project title, and short description. If we scroll down to the page, you'll see that we are calling jQuery first, then ScrollMagic, the core of the ScrollMagic library, and then the addIndicators, which is a plugin which will help us with debugging. All our JavaScript code will go into the main.js, which is currently empty, and we'll write all the JavaScript in here. And let's quickly review the CSS as well. We have the default, the reset styles from the HTML5 boilerplate, and then all our styles for the simple layout inside of non-media breakpoint, which means that every device will pick these styles, and then all the other breakpoints are currently empty. The layout is very, very simple, so the site is responsive as well, and all the styles are picked up by all the devices. And now let's write the first ScrollMagic scene. Okay, let's say that we want to fade in the project 1 when it comes into a view. Okay, so when the user scrolls up and the project becomes visible, we want to fade it in. So the first thing we'll need to do is init ScrollMagic. We'll do that by creating a var controller that will be new ScrollMagic Controller, ScrollMagic.controller. That is telling the browser to use the scroll bar and trigger animation. Okay, what the animation is always defined in a scene. So now we will build a scene. We'll create a variable var our scene equals new ScrollMagic Scene. And inside of it, curly brackets. And then outside of the scene, we'll change the setClassToggle method, because we want to change a class on the project01, the ID, the element with the ID project01, and the class we want to add to it is fadeIn. Okay, so this will add class to project01, and then we'll need to add this to a controller by writing the .add_to and controller. And the options for the scenes are always defined inside of the curly brackets. Okay, so inside of the curly brackets, we're always defining the default trigger element, trigger root, and other options. So let's start with the trigger element and set that to be the project01. Make sure there is a hash because it's an ID project01, and see what happens in a browser. Okay, now when I refresh it and scroll up and down the page, we don't see visually any changes. But if we open the inspector and look at the project01, you'll see that the class is added and removed when we scroll past the middle of the viewport. But visually we don't see any changes. So we need to add something to the style sheet. Okay, we need to define the class. We need to define the animation inside of a style sheet. Let's go to main CSS and find the .project class. Here we'll define the starting position. Okay, the starting position, opacity 0, transform, translate Y 50 pixels. So the starting position will be 50 pixels from the original position, and then we'll create a transition, all 1 second is out. Okay, so that's the starting position and the transition we want to use. And now we will need to define the fadeIn class. So .project.fadeIn. We'll set it to opacity 1 and transform, translate Y 0. Okay, I can copy and paste it from above, change it to 0, and now we have the ending state. Okay, now if I refresh that in a browser, we'll see that the project is fading in when it reaches the middle of the viewport. Okay, it is also sliding slightly up because we've defined the translate Y 50 pixels offset. Let's try to remove that and see how it looks without a movement, just fading in. Refresh the page and see that now it's just fading in without the movement. Okay, so sometimes the simplest thing look the most effective. So play with the right settings, play with the right CSS animations for your elements. Most of the time, the most simplest things are usually the most visually appearing. Okay, so let's keep it as fade in only without any movement. But let's add some indicators. Okay, so go back to the JavaScript and write .addIndicators just before we adding the scene to the controller. This will require a plugin that we've already included before. Okay, so if we go to the HTML, you'll see that at the bottom of the page we're using the addIndicators, and that's why now when I refresh the page, we'll see a trigger1 little label on the right side of the viewport, and also start1, which is the green label, quite hard to see on the blue background, but there is a start1, and that's when the animation is being triggered. Okay, so these indicators are very useful when we need to debug our more complicated scenes. There is a few options when it comes to indicators that lets us set the different color, different label, different name, and also indent them a little bit inside of the page. And we'll do that by going back to the JavaScript, and inside of the addIndicators, write opening, closing brackets, and then inside of it, we'll type in the object defining the options. Okay, so we'll firstly change the name to Fade Scene, and then we can change the color trigger and pass it a black. That will change the color of it to black. Then we can change the indent to 200. That will push it away from the edge of the browser. And then we can define the color start to, let's pick this green color 75C695, but you can type in any other color you like. Okay, if I save that and refresh the browser, we'll see that the trigger has moved to the left by 200 pixels, and also it now says trigger fade scene and start fade scene. So these are more descriptive labels for your animations. Okay, on a more complicated project with a lot of scenes, you might want to really change the name of them. Otherwise, you will end up having trigger 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, and it becomes quite messy. Okay, so you can use these options, and if you want to get even more, you can just search the ScrollMagic API for addIndicators. It's probably under the plugins. Yes, addIndicators plugins. And then you have all the options. Okay. Scene options. You can define a parent, change the name, indent, color start, color end, and color trigger. Okay, so at the moment we're not using the color end because we don't have a duration on our scenes, but we'll get to it a little bit later. We will continue exploring the ScrollMagic API in the following video, but if you want to follow me step by step, simply hop onto my website, sign up for free, and download the working files. The link is in the description, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.